Welcome to 28th, a month in my life with James L. Simmons. Thank you for joining me today. This is episode 3, and the title for this episode is The Past is Not Past. I want to thank the great James Baldwin for the inspiration on this episode. And as I was reading one of the several books that I was reading, I had came across a passage, and he was quoted in that passage. And let me just read it. We'll start off there. The past is not past. History is literally present in all we do. James Baldwin, The White Man's Guilt. I have not read that, but through this book that I'm reading by another author who is studying the works of James Baldwin, made mention to that quote. And as I was thinking about this month's episode and the direction that I wanted to go, and I realized what direction I wanted to go very, very early in the month. Some very big things were happening around the country, and I knew exactly where I wanted to go. And that quote really struck a chord in me as I was thinking about the event that I'm going to dive into a little bit today and just share my feelings and how that situation has affected me, but not only how it has affected me today, but how a similar incident had a very profound impact on my life, 30 years ago. And March 3rd, 1991, I was a 15-year-old sophomore in high school, just getting ready to finish up my basketball year. And, probably coming home from school, and one of the things that I always did at that time was stop at my grandmother's house, say hi, get a bite to eat. And, as she always does at that point in time at night, was watching the news. And I remember watching this situation unfold on TV in real time. And I just really couldn't believe what I was seeing. And the situation that I'm talking about is the Rodney King beating by LAPD, March 3rd, 1991. And this was back during a time where we did not have our hands on cell phones with cameras and all the other various devices that we have access to today, where we can record video and have those things uploaded to social media. Social media wasn't even a thing back then, as far as I can remember. But not having access to situations like that. Police wearing body cameras, whenever they release those things nowadays, we get to see what happened. But it was very, very unique for that day and age to have someone come out with one of those family camcorders and videotape this situation. And the police did not know that they were being videotaped. Mr. King did not know that it was being videotaped. But thank God it was videotaped, really, because it just exposed a lot of things that had been going on probably for a lot longer, periods of time, as far as we're talking about police brutality and things of that nature. I do want to give credit to the person who did videotape that recording, that incident. His name is George Holiday. George Holiday. I'll get back to that in a little bit. But I remember watching this as a 15-year-old as it's unfolding on TV. And this is just the beating part of it. The police beating this man who's on the ground. What it appears like is not resisting. And I encourage you to look this situation up online if you are not familiar with the Rodney King beating and then what later happened after that, the LA riots and things of that nature. I encourage you to look that up and get all of the information about it. I'm not going to go into great details, but I just wanted to make sure that you have the entire history and information of what happened, because I'm not going to go into great details about that. Just a little bit about how I felt at that point in time when I saw this. Again, as a 15-year-old, never have seen anything of that nature before, but definitely have heard about things of that nature happening. And to have it on videotape and finally, I guess, put a validation on the words that have been spoken by Black people in the community of these things happening, to finally see something of that nature. There was a bit of validation on that. Again, as a 15-year-old, not really into social justice and things of that nature. I'm just worried about basketball and school and, things of that nature. But it really caused me to grow up a little bit at that point in time. Going to be driving pretty soon, and we have to have those conversations of what that looks like, driving and being pulled over, hands on the steering wheel. Yes, sir. No, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. No sudden movements and things of that nature. So it made me have to think about that. Made my mom and my dad have to think about that a little bit more, of how to have those conversations with me as an individual. But just going back to the situation with, Mr. King and what he had to endure, whether it be right or wrong, crimes committed on his part. If you see the video, it's just a man there on the ground being beat to death. Got a little bit of statistics on some of the things that did happen. Broken leg, face badly cut and swollen, bruises all over his body, burned areas on his chest from, the stun guns that was given 50,000 votes to him. Again, this was a man that was on the ground. I forget how many police officers were at the scene and that participated in this beating. But I know that there was 4 officers that faced charges. And as I'm looking at a little bit of my notes, 3 of the 4 officers were acquitted of the charges. And what happened after that was a riot. That's the LA riots that you'll look in the history books and you'll get information about all of the destruction, the death, just all of what came out of that situation. And again, as a younger person, not fully understanding where all that hurt, where all that pain really came from, but definitely getting caught up to speed really quick on that situation and what it means to be a young Black man in America, what it means to just not feel like justice is ever on your side. And that was a lesson to be learned. And as I go back to what I said, the title was "The Past is Not Past," I can't help but to fast forward to the present day, 2021, March, and the significance of this month, because there's been many parallels drawn, but George Floyd being killed while in custody in May 2020. The trial for the officer who's been accused of his death started on March 8th of 2021. And that's how I come back to this past is not the past. I wonder, as a people, as Americans, as law enforcement, as citizens, as lawmakers, what lessons are we learning from the things that have happened in the past? And this is just one incident that I'm speaking of. I could speak of many, many, many more incidents that seem to continue to resurface time and time again, where it seems like we haven't learned from the past to be able to move forward and to be in a better place for today and for tomorrow. Because when we had the George Floyd situation, it really hurt to see that on camera, like it's never hurt before. Just the life being taken from this man as the officer had his knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. Just seemed to be no humanity in that person who is supposed to protect and serve. And this is not to vilify all police. I've got two brothers that have been in law enforcement, one currently still in law enforcement. Many, many friends. This is not about bad police officers and all police officers are bad. Of course, we do not want bad ones on the force. They need to be rooted out, and that has to be done. I think there needs to be some reforms made on how we do our policing. And we need to take a very good look at that. So this is not to say that there's no purpose for law enforcement and all police are bad. That's not what this is about. But it is about accountability. And we as the people definitely spoke again during this time of our voices needing to be heard. And this latest incident, 30 years later, as I've been more involved in social justice movements, as I've, just matured and just having more understanding and knowledge of the things that need to happen for us to be at a better place in this world for all of us. It was encouraging to see people all over the country, people all over the world, people of all ethnicities, races, religions, come together and speak their displeasure, speak their hurt, speak their truth, for us all to get to a better place as a people. And for me, that was encouraging. That's step one: awareness, unity, regardless of where you come from. There was a big movement, and I don't need to speak, into great details about all that has happened over the last year, coming up on the year in May, that has happened as a result of this incident. But a lot of good has come out of it, and a lot more has to come out of it. I'm going from 1991 to 2021, and I'm talking about only two incidents. We know that there's been many, many more in between. Many, many more in between. And again, my biggest thing is, where is the learning that's happening? What are we doing to try to improve so that these situations do not happen again? And that's the big question. That's the things that we need to look into. And that's how we get better. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront a little bit and talk about that this month and how I felt about it. One, as a 15-year-old, not really knowing what to think, but knowing that it was a bad situation, to now, 30 years later, having a clearer understanding of the direction that we need to move in and how we do it. We have to come together. People were tired People were disgusted. People were hurt. People were sick to see another human being's life being taken in that manner. And that's what it takes. All of us as human beings to come together for these type of things so we can all enjoy life to its fullest and be accountable. We all need to be accountable. Second thing I wanted to kind of talk about, and it is not in such a as big of a time distance, so to say, a 30-year gap in between those incidents. But last year, at the beginning of this global pandemic, we've all had to undergo many different changes in our routines. And one of those changes that we had to undertake was just how we went about our daily grocery shopping, local grocery store or corner store, convenience store, things of that nature, because of reduced hours, a lot of the different safety precautions that we've had to take. And I remember at the very beginning of the pandemic when the grocery store hours had been reduced and changed. And the lines were very, very long. So, thinking about, I don't want to be waiting. I don't want to be waiting. What can I do to get to the store right when they open? And that was my thought process. I need to get there, get in line, probably maybe an hour before the store opens, get my spot so I can get in and get what I need to get and then go. And it got really crazy because things like, toilet tissue, soap, Clorox wipes, the things that you really needed, you really had to make sure you got there early in order to get those things. So for me, I had to make a decision. And this isn't a decision that everyone has to make, but this was a decision that I had to make in my household. Who's going to go? The area that I live in, driving in the dark, driving with a mask on your face, with some of the things that I've experienced in a neighborhood that demographic, is, 6% African American Black in the area that I live. I've had my run-ins. I've had my reasons to be concerned with certain things. Very, very scary thought for me to have to do that, to be out at night. You're not supposed to be out. There's a curfew, this, and that. You never know who you're going to cross. You never know whose path you're going to cross after having a good day or having a bad day. But the other thing I had to think about is all of the hate recently, at that time, it was really, really new, but just the accusations and accusing of our Asian Americans, our Asian brothers and sisters, of them being the reason that we were in this situation, them being the reason that the coronavirus was here. And I had several personal experiences with people that I knew that bad things were said about them, or they overheard things being said about Asian Americans, and folks' disgust of Asian people because of the situation that they cause and that we are in because of them. So then I immediately think about my wife and her comings and goings out and about in the community. And I knew I could not have her go to the shopping center, no type of stores or anything of that nature, because I didn't want her to be harassed. I didn't want her to be in these situations that could possibly cause harm to her, or have her have to defend herself for anything. Didn't want that to happen. At this time, the kids weren't going out. There was no need for that. So one of us was always at home. So, I became the one who did all of those things. Go out, do the shopping, to make sure that she was safe. And that was early on. That was 2020. And then here we are in 2021, and just a horrific attacks that are happening, in our communities locally here in San Francisco. It seems like things are getting closer to where we live. Is not just the bigger cities. Atlanta, just all over. Our Asian brothers and sisters are hurting. What's happening to them is disgusting. And nobody should ever have to go through that. And again, for me, it's what are the learning points? What are we taking away from these things that are happening? It seems like to me, and this is through my lens, and that's why it's called 28th, a month in my life, that certain folks' lives are valued less than others. Whether we be people of color, whether it be my Asian brothers and sisters, and I can go on and on. We've heard lots of rhetoric and lots of talk from different places and different people. When do we, as the United States of America, step up to the plate and say, and not say, let me take that back, and be what we say we are, the greatest nation in the world, for all of the people who are Americans and not just some. For me, I've always wanted to be, and I do it each and every day, try to be a bridge, try to be light wherever I go. And there are some days where I just don't know if I have the energy to continue to do that. Not saying that there's no fight left in me, not saying that the cause isn't just, it isn't something that I need to do. Because believe me, I've got two reasons that I will never stop, no matter what. I've got two reasons at least, and those are my little girls, because they deserve a better place than what we put out. And a lot of folks will say, there's so much opportunity. You're blessed. And yes, we are. Yes, I am. But my blessings shouldn't be crumbs. Some folks have things that are bigger than crumbs, and I'm at a point now where I'm just tired of that. Need more. So we have to do better. In order to be better, we have to do better. And part of me coming here each month is just to share a little bit of where I'm coming from, some of the things that I see that might be different than you. I heard something today that said America needs a really big history lesson. And I'll wrap it up again by saying this by James Baldwin, excuse me. I'm just going to read it. The past is not past. History is literally present in all we do. In order to be better, we have to be better. In order to be better, we have to do better. And in order to do better, we have to have a fuller awareness of each and every person that's here. Not just myself, but my Asian brothers and sisters, my Mexican brothers and sisters, my Indian brothers and sisters, my black brothers and sisters, my white brothers and sisters. Have to be aware of everybody, not just myself. So thanks again for joining me on this, the third episode of 28th, A Month in My Life with James Simmons. I appreciate the support. It's great having conversations offline after I do an episode. I get a couple of direct messages and on all different platforms and just a lot of encouragement. So I appreciate it. If there's anything that you have questions about, feel free to, contact me on one of those platforms, whether it be YouTube or Instagram or Facebook. Leave me a message, leave me a comment. I definitely would love to hear from you and go a little bit deeper. 28 minutes is not a lot of time, but it's just enough to scratch the surface and to open our eyes to something a little bit different. So again, thank you. I appreciate you. And until next month, be well.